Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to say to the opposition that in their model, oppositions have no position in governments whatsoever. So we don't understand why the opposition actually goes against us in this one. But let's go to a serious rebuttal. Look, what we basically heard from the speaker is that the courts shouldn't have the legitimization to do that. And why is that? Because, you know, courts are not elected, they're not representative, etc., etc., etc. What do we have to say about that? First of all, that if we change the constitution, right, not a regular law, but the constitution, those values which we all as a society agree upon, we say that the court is perfectly legitimate to make those calls. We say that this is the job of the court to make that call, and Michael has shown you exactly why it is the job of the court. But furthermore, we've been hearing about the fact that they are not appointed. We say that this is nothing new, actually, because we know that many of the time the courts do make those decisions because we give them the power to, because we don't want them to be a part of the regular political game. Just like in the United States, where every court could rule out legislation, exactly because we don't want to give that power to politicians. So, second thing of rebuttal, the things about ineffectiveness, so-called. Now, we've heard an analysis that parties will break up, reunite, or and get money from donors, no thank you, and afterwards we'll just combine a new coalition. Sound logic on its face. Now, what do we say? We say that the coalition, once we actually separate the dominant party, we inherently make them different parties, right? So we don't think the public will miraculously, right, pick the exact two parties, no thank you, that will actually form the same coalition that has been, again. So we say that it could be very effective. Furthermore, we see, no thank you, that if those parties would decide to get reunited and would decide to break the law, as Michael told you, we will rule them out, and this is end game for us. Thus, this proposition, is very effective. No, thank you. Now, moving on to my substantive, I will bring two main points here. First of all, I will show why this proposition is good for the minorities. No, thank you. Second, I will show why it will lead to better cause. Let's start with the first one. Right. When one party, no thank you, dominates the political sphere for such a long time, as Mike has shown you, such a failure inherently is within the system, we say that there has to be a minority group that actually gets hurt from that. Why is that? First of all, because minority and majority interests do not necessarily go in the same way, right? We know that sometimes the minority wants to preserve its culture, and I'll take you in a second, while the majority wants to expand itself. Sometimes the minority wants to take control over their education, while the majority wants other things, etc., etc. And second, because we say that the moment that a party legislates any statutes that the majority wants, and this is answering what we've heard in the BOI of the laws, we don't have a problem with the laws that the majority will make. We have a problem with the laws the majority will never make in favor of the minority because it lacks representation, right? Because of that political stagnation that we're talking about answering their BOI. Now, the second thing we say is that when one party legislates any statutes that the majority wants, there are basically no political deals because that party can do basically whatever it wants. I'll be closing in a second. No, in a second, sorry. That inherently leads to the fact that minorities' interests are left out because they don't have that bargaining power they had before. Takes for instance Shas, I'm sorry, one moment. Takes for instance Shas, the party from Israel that you know is a minority and does represent a minority, but because it is a tiebreaker between two big coalition-forming parties, it actually has the power to promote the interests of the minority. We say this is a great thing. You don't agree?
Do you accept that sometimes dominance arises from popularity, like in the case of Google, which has 95% of the search engine market, but isn't a sort of an evil empire? Google is just popular and good. Okay, deal with the example of Google. It's dominant, but it's good and it's popular.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I got the idea. So first of all, as I said, even if 95% of all democracies would be as coherent as you say, we still have the 5% that inherently gets hurt. Second, and that leads me to the second point, and before that, this is another legitimization as the opposition has requested. Now the second point is actually better calls. Now why is that? We say that in the situation that they are offering, we have dominant leading parties which appoint the same leaders and the same people in the key positions, right? Why is that? Because political change inherently depends on how the citizens actually check and balance on the government. How? When citizens vote against a party, what that party has to do in order to re-elect again is make a change in its lines, right? Is to bring somebody else up front, or to entirely change its platform, or whatever. So, or else it won't get re-elected, and of course, which is their interest. What happens when the same people stay in position as opposition wants you to point forward? We say that we get the same way of thinking, right? Because we know the same people making the same calls in the same judgment rooms over and over again. Second, we say we never get the other side of every story, right? We only get what the majority wants to show and to agree. The majority can call up and do anything it basically wants because it has the power to legislate and overlook minorities, poor groups, or any other groups within those 5% that the POI has been talking about, out of order, I'm sorry, which is in consensus. Why is that not a good thing? Because all these lead to the same line of thinking, not a plural way of thinking that necessarily make worse calls, because we don't know the entire information and the entire story upon its own levels, and only the one level that serves the majority. So we get less representation for minorities. We get way worse calls from the government, and we've shown you that this completely works under every realistic system. We call it a propose.